What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. This week I'm back for a new video, and this time I have a video on Bochka Techno and we have SØRENGA. As usual, you can check the project file if you want it in the link in the description. Take the time also to thank you guys so much for the support. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. And now let's get into it. So I'm gonna show you first the Bochka kick. So of course it's heavily inspired on my recent tutorial on hard industrial kicks and Bochka kicks. So this is how this one sounds. And I'm gonna show you the group that I used to make it. At first it was sounding like this, and then I just use a lot of other processing, but this is how it sounds first. So I'm using the framework of my tutorial. So I first did like a rumble kick, especially focused on the lows and the mids. So for this one, I'm using unprocessed rumble of my hard kick. And so for this one, I just took like a random kick punch. You just throw in a convolution reverb 100%, then you just render it to audio, and this is what I get. Here it's heavily processed because I have lots of distortion here, but without it, it's just a basic rumble. And here I just want to focus and keep the sub, and I want to cut usually those nasty frequencies that I have here. I then EQ again, just for balance. I want just a bit more bass and less sub, and this is going to be my rumble. For the punch, I'm using a basic punch, so this one is just like a basic punch made out of Serum, and I just withdraw here the transient because I'm gonna make it here, and here I just have a lot of saturation. I want something pretty heavy, and I balance the frequencies. All of this together is gonna be heavily distorted, saturation, Oxford inflator, OTT for compression. I have also stage 1 for wideness and controls of the stereo. I have an EQ here to make it a bit more clear and cut the mud here. I have a SØRENGA just for any resonances, and then compression to give it a bit more dynamic, and just a final clipper. On top of that, I'm gonna use here punch. So for this punch, I've used the industrial punch, again something that we've made together during the tutorial on our industrial kicks. So this is just punch that's going through a lot of distortion, and then I just make it more sharp with that fader, and I isolate here the mids. I just want like a punchy transient. And then I'm gonna have this Bochka effect layer. I have actually two kind of layer. This one is just a kick straight out of my sample pack that you can get for free on Bochka. And I just use here the tail. I of course cut the sub, and I just use it and make this Bochka effect with the automation like this. So basically you can use any already pre-made kick and just reuse it to make those Bochka effects. I have also another one here which is made out of a perk to give it also that kind of narrow perky feeling. So I'm using here just a random perk. I can change the pitch if I want it to resonate differently. If I want another kind of note, I just cut the sub. I use my delay rack, which is basically the combination of 16 echo, 8 echo and dotted 8 echo. And I'm using also a reverb here, pretty narrow. I don't want this. I want something muffled. It feels like Bochka actually. And I have again the same EQ that I have here. It just enhances that Bochka feeling, and it works well. So altogether, this is going to sound like this. And of course, I just have final tweakings, lots of EQ. I'm a bit of a mess sometimes, but it's just to cut some resonances. So for instance, this one, because of course there's lots of distortion, so I'm gonna have these resonances and also this one. Then just a final like inflator for saturation. Then I just render this to audio and I get this kick, but then I'm gonna EQ a lot because I felt like it was really muddy and I wanted a different tone. So without these EQs, you get back the sound that I have. And then I'm just gonna EQ heavily. So I'm gonna have this EQ again. I'm just cutting like a few dBs again here, pretty much here a lot, because I felt it was really, really muddy. So don't hesitate sometimes to have like deep cuts, but of course you always make narrow cuts and wide boosts when you use your EQs. And I wanted also to gently push the sub so that it's more clear. I just have here a clipper after doing these EQs just to cut the peaks. Then I'm adding another top, and it's actually just the same technique that I have in my kick group for the Bochka effect. I'm just using like 2-3 tops that you can get from Reverb Sounds. And I'm just adding the exact same processing. I just wanted a bit more top after I cleaned all the mess from my kick. I also took like one of the kicks and I just took back the top from it. This one is more like a transient, very in the highs, and to get it's just to give back some dynamic and some transient. Altogether it's grouped. And then I just had final saturation just to feel a bit more industrial. I don't touch the lows because I have already a lot at this point. Just an inflator, a final OTT compressor, a SUS2, and a final clipper just for the peaks. And that's how I made this kick. So with that, you can then analyze your kick and see what's the note. So here it was a G. So I have a key of my track with this. Here I'm just making a reverse kick. So nothing special. I just render my kick to audio and then reverse it to use it for my transitions. And now we're going to get to my drums. So for the drums, I have some very distinctive open hats that you find in Bochka Techno. So basically it's just a classic pattern like this. It enhances even more the Bochka effect with the offbeat groove and feeling. So here I'm just using like a basic 99 closed hat from Ableton. I'm just creating that velocity pattern with a very low volume ear closed hi-hat and another one with more volume. I choose the pitch that I like, so I pitch it down here. And then I just distort it, put some delay rack so that it's more like industrial. And you see here just a hat without everything. It's more lively with a delay. Then you distort to get some really industrial feeling. Then I compress to cut the tail and I want something sharp. Then shifter, just change it completely. And sometimes it works. You can just create like an infinite amount of hi-hats and then just a final reverb. And then just EQ. And I EQ a lot. I have lots of highs, but here I want something that's very dark and dull, especially for this style. So that's why I EQ a lot in the highs, but I wouldn't do it for some classic art techno. Final SUS2, I put it on every drum chain and just a final clipper for the picks. I actually distort pretty much a lot with this. I then have another open hat, and this one is actually to enhance also that groove, but to give it more in the high end. To cover a bit of that frequency area. And it's just exactly the same chain, but I think I'm just using an open hat and here I was using a closed hat, but it's the same thing. Then I have a ride, and for this one I just picked up a nice sample that I found that I felt was having a nice groove, and I enhance it also with that groove preset from Ableton to give something more in the background, like an ambience and something pretty dark. So I liked it for the vibe of the track. Then I just found another sample, but then again I'm just squashing the sample at first as something like this, but I just distort it heavily with the overdrive, put it some reverb, and then EQ properly. And you get this. And then just a final one. This one is more random, so I'm using Snake. I just randomize the gates, the velocities, and then I'm just distorting again the capitator overdrive just to create something in the background. A huge reverb and lots of delay. And all of these drums are then grouped together. It's all glued by this drum bus. And then I have my sidechain, so I have a sidechain here just a bit for the kick. And I don't sidechain like 100% because the groove is not as nice. So sometimes I put it like this, but sometimes it works less. It's a way to still make some space for the kick, but it's okay because I do have only frequencies over 1K or pretty much in that frequency area. And this one is gonna make sure I don't have any bass during the kick punch. Then I have my noise group. So this is going to be basically the ambience, like the dark sound behind my kick. And I'm using different techniques, but it's all pretty much some noise. So here, this is the first one. So here I'm just creating this pattern every 2 bars. Just took like a random, I don't know, like it's a vocal, but it just doesn't matter. Just a small part of a random sample. You warp it down and then you rewarp it and you push up the sound. So let me do it again. It was like this. So you can just stretch the sound like this, then rewarp it and then put it back in the highs. And that way you can get that crazy effect. So that's how I did these. And I use these samples. And then I just put distortion, reverb, delay. Sometimes I just put back the EQ that I have for the Bochka effect. And I mean, it's just creating like a noise sweep in the background. I have another one here. So every 2 bars again, but not at the same time, just using an impact. But this impact is drived to 100% decapitator with lots of drive. So it's basically creating only noise. And I've also pitched it down because otherwise it's like this. And you get interesting tones and harmonics when you pitch it down. So that's why I like it. And then I EQ. And you can also make it move with the auto filter. So it's more lively and it's not the same thing each time it plays. So with that LFO, and here you can adjust the rate, you can have something that is always moving here. And it's not the same thing each time it plays. I have another one here, it just doesn't play at the same time. And this one is just another impact. And again, I'm using the same technique. So when I play it like this, it's just a different impact. And I have a final one here just with a perk, random notes, playing with the octaves also. And again, this time I just put some reverb before the decapitator. That way the reverb is going to be also transformed into some kind of noise. And it's going to create something lively like this. All of this together, sidechain, of course. I have another type of noise. This one is more like grit or kind of industrial or hardcore grit. And basically I'm using the same technique. I have a deep impact, but it's going through lots of reverb. And then just a crazy amount of distortion, like the maximum punish mode and drive to the maximum. And what I do is I keep the mix a bit lower when there is impact so that I do have some bass. Otherwise it's gonna feel like something completely squashed. And it also makes something more lively, more moving. I have another one here that is pitched down, but same technique. And here I just reuse it again in the track, but I make sure I don't have any lows and that it's sidechain on the group. I have also some auto filters in the break, and it's also a way to control your frequencies during that breakdown. Okay, and final group is my harmonics. So sometimes in this track, SØRENGA uses some vocals, some choirs in the background, or just some plugs and melodies that are made from saw waves or other type of waves, but something that feels pretty dark. So I have this melody that I made. So I took 3 or 4 notes in the scale, G Phrygian, Phrygian minor, are pretty cool for dark vibe, and I just throw them at each quarter of a bar. I took a random preset from Serum 2, so it was Pluck Moon Sailor. But then I tweaked a lot of things. I just put off the oscillator C, I changed a bit the wavetables, I changed the envelope. I also tweaked a bit the filter, the delay, the reverb, just to get something more dark and fitting to this track. Basically, you can transform this plug into something more industrial thanks to distortion and reverb. Because as you can hear, here it's just a simple plug, and then it's just... Thanks to the amp, it's completely changed to something more distorted, more dark, more heavy. And then you just use also the delay to make something moving, to have also mid and higher frequencies moving in the background. Then I use OTT, especially on my leads, makes it even more powerful. And then it's EQing. Of course, with all of these amps, I have lots of highs, so that's why I EQ like this. Otherwise it's too heavy, and here I don't want those low mids, it's the space for the Bochka kick. And the way to control your harmonics is dynamic EQ, basically. Since the note is changing, it's a good way to have the same kind of EQ if the frequency changes, especially here for those sounds in the mid-frequency area. And I have also here the auto filter just to gain a bit more power here when it starts back at this point in the track. And then I have 2 sort of choir. It's made from a preset from Ableton, choirific, so it's already something a bit dark. And here I just make some long bars in my scale. For my intro, I use the same technique to make it more dark and heavy, basically the amp and some long reverb, making also some cuts here in the mid frequencies, sidechaining to make sure it doesn't clash with the kick. I'm also making another type here. Just, it goes a bit quicker, it has a bit more amps, so it's more distorted when the tracks moves forward. And I'm also using here this pad tool to transform it into a sort of pad. At first it sounds like this, and inside this tool I have a big reverb and some grain delay to create those different layers on top of it. I also lots of distortion here, just took a preset from Ableton, a phaser to make it move while it's playing, and also lots of different automations to make it move. So here I have the cutoff of the filter that opens, I have another filter here for the second oscillator, and I do the same here for this first one with the cutoff opening, especially here in the intro. For that, it's more like a horn vibe. You can also play with the resonancy, the attack here, so I make it slower in the breakdown to make that bass. And I use also this frequency automation to make the sub appear slowly so that it's not too abrupt during the breakdown. And I guess that's pretty much it for my harmonics. It's just a final point here for my breakdown. I'm using this type of kick, so just playing here with the kick punch and playing here with the auto filter to create that effect, and just using then a reverse kick or some sweep here in the breakdown to ease the transition a bit more. And that's it for this track, guys. So I hope you like it. Thank you guys so much for the support. Tell me what you think in the comments, and I see you in the next one. Ciao, guys.